You know, I'm usually always the only black person.
Usually, I'm the only black kid at shows.
It's usually I'm the only black person.
Yeah, I was like the only black person there.
Wow. There's 300 white kids and 2 black kids.
You're just like, damn.
Yeah, I'm cool.
It's been harder than I have ever known. If I win this race, I get back my...
Why do so many black people dislike Elvis Presley? The blues music that Elvis and a lot of other rock and rollers borrowed from was created and performed by black artists who were relegated to a genre that was known as race music.
When you're black, you're punk rock all the time.
And that is the sound of punk. Now, there was a decent amount of women who led the movement. Patti Smith, Joan Jett, Debbie Harry, and Susie Sue, and they all got major recognition. But black or Latino or any other shade of punk, not really.
Is the Onyx Experience, all right? And it's basically celebrating black artists doing some rock shit upside your head, all right?
Why am I looking outside when Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Beatles, all of the ones that are considered the fathers of rock and roll, stole from our ancestors, were inspired by, Elvis, all of them. You will see all of them have said that. Why am I looking at them to create me?
CMST Talks.
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 CMST
CMST
Talks.
Talks.
CMST Talks. CMST Talks.
CMST Talks.
CMST Talks, the new brand. It's going to take a little bit of time for that to get into my mouth after obviously knowing it as the Regent Park School of Music for so long. But this name change is a way for us to really better connect and reflect all of the sites and communities that that the school represents, not just Regent Park and Jane and Finch, and looking to reach more communities in the future. As always, I'm Thompson, Egbo-Egbo. It's a pleasure to be here after a little bit of a break from seeing you all. Welcome to the 14th installment of CMST Talks. Also, welcome to the new youth committee members in both Regent Park and Jane and Finch locations. The names in rock and roll, the names in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame are ubiquitous with Elvis, Pink Floyd, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, to name a few. But how about Big Mama Thornton, Rosetta Thorpe, or Screamin' Jay Hawkins? In today's episode, we'll be speaking with David Cox, aka Click, executive producer of the Onyx Experience, a film designed to showcase and bring stories of Canadian Black rock musicians like Fifi Dobson, OBGMs, SATE, and other Black artists to the forefront. Here's a mainstay, Click's a mainstay in the industry as an executive and instructor of music business at the Remix Project, and is an outspoken advocate for the realness both in hip hop and rock music. Also joining us is SATE. And I don't know, SATE in the room with us. Oh, great. Got the computer working. Perfect. So, awesome. Good to see you. SATE is no stranger to the music scene in Canada. She is really, royalty, basically. One of the first people and first stars I ever got to play with. And I'm so fortunate to have her here and have this chat with us. These are two of some of my favorite people, and I'm excited to get this talk going. How's it going?
Hello, hello, hello. Greetings.
We're getting back to it. I had a long intro. Jasper does such a good job. I feel bad, stepping all over his notes. How are you guys doing?
Blessed, blessed. It's a couple days after my birthday.
Amazing.
I'm feeling good.
Belated.
We just attended the Legacy Awards. That was on Sunday, the 25th. Performed at it, represented hard rock or rock, at the awards, which is something that we'll get into it more, but something that's often overlooked at, dare I say, a lot of Black awards, and gatherings and included in the conversation of what Black music is. Out of a lot of people's mouths. So I'm really happy that this conversation is happening, and it feels like this conversation is happening a lot with a lot of people reclaiming or diving into this idea, this understanding this understanding that all music is our music, is Black music.
Amazing. For people who don't know what the Legacy Awards are, can you just give them a few brief sentences?
The Legacy Awards, it was the first, sorry. The Legacy Awards are an award ceremony celebrating Black achievements of Black people, music, sports, broadcasting, fashion, everything across, just celebrating Black people doing what we do. This was the first time it was broadcast. This is the first time an awards of this type was broadcast on national television. There have been other awards that are celebrating Black achievements, but this particular one is new and equally as special.
I saw a lot of it on Instagram, and I've seen a few of these different things. Still trying to figure out why I haven't gotten an invite to any of them. I don't know what.
Listen, I don't know why you weren't there. Honestly, and I will say I'm honestly surprised that I was invited, because I'm often not invited to these things. So, yeah, we'll make things different, because there are a lot of people that definitely at least need to be in the room, but there's so many people to be honored for their contributions to the landscape of what Canada is in the Black community. There's so many people.
Yeah, no, for sure. I was doing a ceremony for Oscar Peterson. They put him on the mint, and it's interesting. Even with him, although he's a celebrated jazz pianist, there's still, I've been in spaces where people don't even realize he's Canadian, right? And it's not, it's not even that. It's like, oh, he's from Canada. Like, oh, you guys did something there with.
Well, I think that's precisely what it, my thing about celebrating Black achievements, where we know about Drake, The Weeknd, we know about Cardinal Official, we know about Julie Black in Canada, right? We know about Drake and The Weeknd all over the world. Some people don't even realize that they're Canadian as well. I mean, Drake, yes, he's always repping. Actually, The Weeknd too. But I was talking to one of my friends stateside, and I was telling her that Deborah Cox was at the show, and she's like, "Oh, she's Canadian? I didn't even know that." And it's like there's a lot of people outside of Canada that don't know the superstars that are Canadian, and there's a lot of people inside Canada that don't know who we all are, like, don't know the legacy, don't know the elders, don't know the ancestors, don't know the people that have paved the way, you know. February comes along every year, we can name all of the people that have fought revolutions and built systems and fought, you know, all kinds of things, been the first at you know, this and that and everything in America. But tell us to name the people that have done so much in Canada, and we'll be stumbling, you know. And that's really unfortunate.
Why do you think it's important that people know, though?
Well, I think it's important because it it instills a sense of pride, accomplishment, furthering on the legacy, institutionalizing our names. Um, you know, it builds an infrastructure, it builds community, it builds, yeah, pride is a big thing.
I think one of the crazy things, you know, which I started to come to realize later on, is that there are Black Canadians whose legacy is it's like 9-10 generations in Canada. People don't even know that. And like, that's a part of it. It's not just like, oh, they're here and like, you know, they happen to come and they happen to do something. It's like, no, part of that building of the country is these people were part of that whole path, right? Not to digress on the topic, but it is interesting that that is a part of the story that is only recently, and not even very well, a part of the fact that like there are people who are like Black Canadians, like Black Canadians, not, hey, I'm first generation. I'm like, no, than most of the people you see here.
Exactly. So, I mean, the conversation of that age-old question of where are you from is really insulting to a lot of Black Canadians that have been here for 9 and 10 generations, because they've been here much longer, built, and probably been here, you know, some people, some generations have been here for longer than the settlers, you know? So yeah, there's pockets of settlements that I know of, Amber Valley in Alberta, you know, there's a bunch of settlements in Ontario, of course, in Nova Scotia, but it's just, yeah, it's a travesty that we don't know that, and we're told the narrative that yes, all of us are immigrants because the Indigenous people are the first peoples of the land, but there are so many people that have been here, you know, making ways.
Yeah, it's interesting that connection to the different pockets and places where these communities have been. And you think about the music, how it's sort of like you have to be forced into this pocket. So if it's not, you know, if you're not within those boundaries, then what do we do with you, right? And if you look at the music that way, I even think about even music today, where there's music that's called pop that's not really pop, or music that's called R&B, but the only thing that makes it R&B is the person who's singing it, right? You know, and so, you know, if we start to think about the music and how it kind of evolves and where people have decided it needs to go because of how it's packaged, you know, we see a lot of those. I feel like correlations, and even if we think about the minstrels of like, you know, white people putting on blackface to do, you know, minstrels, but then Black people pretending to be white people doing blackface. Minstrel, how it keeps going back and forth.
Yeah,
and
that's
Jasper had in the intro where you were talking about people looking to the Beatles to kind of find themselves. It's kind of that second version of the minstrels where it's like the first version was the blackface, and then the second version was the whiteface doing blackface to bring back what it is, right?
Yeah, because essentially it is, again, it is of my ancestors. It is of my ancestors. It's always been. So how am I going and looking past the, like, outside of the tree? I am part of that root. I am part of that tree. Why am I looking at another tree? that is feeding off of my tree, off of my roots, you know, to get inspiration and know myself.
Nah, for sure. Click. I want to start with I'm kind of jumping ahead, but I feel like it's a good place to start to kind of come back. The Onyx Experience. Why was it created, and what are you hoping to do with it? And what's the platform and story and message, or anything? Like, I don't want to even put the words into your mouth. Where does it come from?
The Onyx Experience was something that myself and SATE manifested. It originally started as an idea to do a festival, highlighting Black artists that do alternatively speaking music. And when I say alternatively speaking, alternative to the norm of what people consider Black people's music. Like when people think, oh, it's hip hop and R&B all the time, it's like, there's a lot of artists that kind of I call the alternative, because they're the alternative to that, and they come in different shapes and sizes, be it heavy, be it, pop, be it rock, in different ways, and, obviously working with SATE and just seeing how powerful and creative artist she is, I just wanted to highlight her, but also highlight other artists that I thought would be great to have that type of experience. Like, there's other spaces that have been doing that in the past, like Afropunk in the States and stuff, but we never really had, there was maybe two other shows I could think of that happened in Toronto years ago that kind of did that. And actually SATE, I think, performed at both of those. And so over the years, it hasn't been a consistent thing in people's faces. And I just felt like I want to do this again. But because of COVID, I just had anxiety of wanting to do it live. I didn't want some band to cancel from doing the show because of something happened, or, do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to run into that scenario. So I thought, the best way to probably do this is maybe make it a film, like actually, create an experience that will highlight these people in the best way possible. And I didn't want to create a film that was like a live stream. Like I didn't want it to be like, a crappy setup of cameras and bad sound, and nobody really wants to stay and watch that, so I partnered up with Andre Hamilton, who was the director, who we've done some work with in the past, and he really loved the concept and idea of kind of capturing these artists in a art cinematic way. And Kismet, who's an amazing street artist, I'd seen some of his work, and I just felt like his work would be perfect for this type of setting. So when you watch on his experience, it takes you through a journey of like a evolving art piece that these artists are performing in. But the other cool thing is, adding the element of behind the scenes footage where you actually see like Jamal Padmore, who actually was part of a band called the Carps back in the day, who's really connected to the community as well, to be involved in that whole process. And I thought it really came together very well, and to have CBC launch it, and then for it to be, kind of on a platform that people can watch on a regular basis. And, it's very grateful that CBC also did some promo around it and make sure that people are aware of it. But that's really like the reasoning for it, was like, I just wanted these artists to be heard and seen and done in a cool way, And I think the coolest thing out of the whole project was actually being able to see the film in a theater. So I encourage, if you ever get the chance to watch it in a theater setting, it's probably the best setting there is. We were able to hear it loud on some loudspeakers. It connected differently. I'm going to be showing the film actually at M for Montreal Festival in Montreal in November in a theater. So I'm excited for that.
You know what? Jasper has actually the trailer queued up. So for people who want to know what we're talking about, we're going to show that quickly right now. Jasper, you have that? Thanks.
I think one of the coolest things about this film too was the fact that we shot it over 2 days in one space, and there was an energy, in the room. The majority of the people behind the camera were Black as well, so it was like a really cool experience and energy and magical event that all of us were just proud to be part of. And there was a comfortability to be ourselves and speak our truth. You know what I mean? So I think you played a couple highlights of me speaking or something like from the film earlier, but I don't know if I would have, like, they caught some truthful moments of our passion or my passion in regards to how I feel about Black artists not being heard and seen when it comes to rock music, and that's really why I made the film, is because I want these artists to be heard and seen.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's almost like where history begins is not really where history begins. So why does history need to begin in the middle of the timeline of the music, and that be sort of the, be what we look to, when it's funny because something as obvious as Rolling Stones, which is a Muddy Waters song, like they literally, and I think the British artists are a little different because they were very, I think, I don't know if authentic's the word, but they're very clear about where their references were coming from, right? In the States, you don't really see it the same way, or North America, you do still see it in some artists. But
I don't know. I think not all UK artists. I don't think all European artists were like that, though. I think Rolling Stones.
Well, if I can interject. I think we did a lot of deep diving into all of this, and I will say the Rolling Stones were definitely like rebels on the scene, and they were as outspoken as they could be, but we're still in a system that still looks to the white male as the innovator and the starter and the one to be almost the savior. So Led Zeppelin, Dirty Dogs, they really tried to pull a fast one on a bunch of people outright stealing songs from people and putting their names on them, and got taken to court, thankfully. But there's a lot of, like, the Beatles, people look to the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, I can name all of them as being the fathers of rock and roll, but they were actually inspired by and wanting to be blues bands. They were inspired by blues players and wanting to be blues bands. They were writing
Specifically
blues
Black
songs.
blues players, Black blues.
Well, I mean, that was really all
the main
blues
at that time
that was there. Eric Clapton is a blues guy, but he was obviously wanting to be a blues guy because of Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and all of them. But when you see clips of, like, Little Richard talking that I am the architect of rock and roll and people laughing at him, when he is actually the architect of rock and roll. Chuck Berry, Sister Rosetta, Big Mama Thornton, uh, Ma Rainey, all of these blues people that were that was when we talk about even pop music, that was pop music. So you can still go into pop music and see the blues framework. It's still the blues.
And you can go even further into the future and look at bands like The Death. If you know who Death is, they came at a time before what punk was even considered punk, and were only in maybe the last 10 years, SATE, people start to
Mhm.
even know who Death is because of a documentary that came out about them.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? But
Mhm.
you know, the bands like MC5 and all these like really cool grunge punk bands will all credit Death as they influenced them. You know what I mean? So it's
I mean, there's
it's
also
a continuous thing that happens.
Tina Bell is something that came out of the last couple of years. She's the lead singer and basically the architect of grunge, you know, out of Seattle. She was in a band called Bam Bam, and the drummer is from Soundgarden. So it's not it's like it, it people knew who she was. Like there are people like you start something, and especially as a Black person, when it comes to music innovation, you know, constantly innovating, and then the music gets taken, co-opted, and then you're having
Exploited.
to find uh, co-opted, exploited, and then you're having to find a way to make something new and innovative again because you've been pushed out of it. And it's a constant cycle, you know, like we can go back to I'm jumping all over the place, but one of the reasons why the Rolling Stones and Elvis Presley, let's go further back. Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, um, Buddy Holly, all of those people were able to be stars in America is because of race records. So there was an actual divide where they would only play Black singers on Black radio. They would not allow, like, there's a clip, I think it's of Frankie Lyman. I'm not sure if it's Frankie
You
Lyman.
mean they'd only play white singers on major radio? They wouldn't play
Right. They would only play white singers on radio that would, you know, touch white audiences on
it was
mainstream radio.
it's very
There was
written.
it's payola. That's where payola comes in, you know.
A lot of it, to go even deeper, is the racist, you know, tendencies of things, because you had a record industry person wanting to take a song that he thinks, oh, this is a great song. They would literally take that song and go get a white band to go and perform it. So they had the white voices, they would dumb it down and then take it to radio, and the Black people wouldn't see any benefits. Like back then they were Robin songs. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, so when you hear that, especially in America, the whole you know, I think you were playing actually another clip of our Q&A that we did after the premiere, where I was talking about the conditioning that has happened not only to not just the Black, to the world. There's been a level of conditioning of what is considered rock, like who owns rock music. And a lot of that's because if you think about it, if major radio is only playing all these white people, and then they continuously create and put the narrative that this is what rock music sounds like, even though the foundation came from somewhere else, and you do that for like 50 years, you've brainwashed a whole bunch of people, including ourselves, of what that music came from. So, you know, I've run into people that, you know, have come up to me after seeing the film saying, dude, I didn't realize like Black music was rock. I didn't realize rock music was Black music. Like we're so conditioned to think that it's not ours when we're the ones that created it.
It's funny, say you were talking about the whole pushing out thing. I remember seeing, I forget what the movie was, a little documentary on B.B. King, and how I think he had taken a break or something, and he was in Memphis going to a show. They showed up, and he told the driver to go around the block because he didn't believe that was the show he was supposed to do, because the audience had completely flipped on him. And so he shows up and it's a complete white audience. And I guess he's like, I guess we came to the wrong place, you know? And so he's like, let's go around the block. Maybe there's a different show getting out, you know? And so just thinking about things like that, how there's a music, you enjoyed it, and then now it kind of gets, people basically gentrify it, right? And they move you out of that space. They move. So now you got to find something else. And, you know, the payola is something that happened a lot, just for students who don't understand or know about that. Do you want to dive into that a little bit, Click?
Payola, basically, the mob, yes, the mafia had a very strong hold in the music industry, especially in the early 1900s, and controlled a lot of what was being played on the radio, what was, and a lot of it was, if they had a record, they would basically pay off a radio station and give them a bunch of money and say, you're going to make this song a hit. So they really controlled that whole narrative of what is supposed to be played and what isn't. So it's like, okay, Frank Sinatra is going to be big because we're going to put all the money behind this and make sure that nobody else plays anything else but Frank Sinatra. Do you know what I'm saying? And a lot of the mafia also infiltrated the record companies. So the record companies were also in cahoots with this. And some people actually, it wasn't until maybe the 80s that actually it went to court in the States. Like, it's illegal to do that, right? And actually somebody who's really well known was charged with this exploiting radio stations was Clive Davis. He was, yes, it's written, it's in the courts. Like, he was in cahoots with this, you know what I mean? There's a good book to read that gives you the whole, it's like reading a gangster movie, but in the music industry, called The Hitman, by Frederick Dayton. It's all about payola and the mob's ties, and just how, from the early 1900s all the way up to the 80s, and how it kind of went away. But to be frank with you, it still exists today. It's just covered in a different way, so paying back
it's streaming now. It's streaming now.
Yeah, but it's also done in a way where, like, back in the day, somebody might come to a radio programmer with a bag of money and say, hey, play a record. They can't necessarily do that the same way now. Now it might be like, hey, let's go to Vegas for the weekend. I'll pay for you. And let's, it's done in other ways of influencing decisions.
Going back to some of the, I wouldn't even say pioneers, but some of the names in the industry that artists that students should really get to know. So not just like who has inspired the music, who are the artists now who are pushing this through, who are not, who aren't the people who they normally go to, because not everyone, I think one of the things that maybe students should understand and know is okay is that it's okay if you don't like hip hop. It's okay if you don't like R&B. It's okay, whatever the music is you like. There isn't a specific music you're supposed to like because of where you live, where you're from, where you're born, what you look like. And so getting some of those artists, I think, which has been great for the work you've been doing, which is just bringing people to the forefront. But Click, you've worked with so many really just awesome people who have made real dents, not just on the Canadian scene, but the scene globally. Who would be people that you would refer people to look for? Like, where should they look for artists? Where should they, what are maybe some of the venues? What are things that, if they're not necessarily saying, everyone thinks I should be a rapper, but I don't really want to be a rapper. Where else am I going to find these spaces that, maybe they look like me, maybe they don't, but I can start to find my footing.
Oh boy.
Go ahead, Sam.
I first and foremost, I encourage all of you, and I think it's hard to do this a little bit to a certain degree, but not. I call it's called digging, is what I call it. I call it digging. Actually a good friend of Jasper and mine, I used to go digging with him, discovering music all the time, because that's the special thing about music. It's not being force-fed what you think is, listening to the radio or turning on the television or whatever and having somebody tell you what's cool. Sometimes it's the discovery of something, and I encourage you all to sometimes just go to a record store, like an actual record store, you know, and go digging and look at the covers, search like the liner notes of who played on certain records. You know, that's like finding out, okay, who's Bernard Purdie? Oh, this drummer. Oh, he played with James Brown. Oh, he played with so and so. He played with, like, you start to see these names pop up on all these people's records. You want to follow their journey, because if they were really good on one record, they're good on another people's record somewhere. You know what I mean? And so to me, I can't give everybody one destination. I just think it's it's an actual mental thing you have to say to yourself, like, involves having the capacity. Is like, let me go digging, let me find some new stuff, let me ask, let me share some music with somebody and find out what they like or what I like. You know what I mean? Another way is like, I have, actually, I'm going to share something in the chat there real quick. I have like it's not everything under the sun, but it's a little cool YouTube playlist that we created on the Onyx Experience page on YouTube. And there's a lot of cool stuff there, you know, Canadian and American, of some rock artists that you might not have ever heard of before, or you might have heard of, you know what I mean? That I believe are pivotal in shaping the landscape of rock music in some shape or another.
Say, were you gonna say something? Probably.
I think she was frozen.
Just needing to
Now
refresh.
we lost her for a moment.
That's all. Good.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, as you're speaking, one of the things I was thinking of is just that reminder of like, there's not, you know, the music is, someone was saying to me, you know, in the last, we're going through another century where we haven't changed the tuning. So the notes are the same, you know, everybody's using the same 12, you know, semitones. And so it's all a part of the same thing. So you should never feel like there is the music, you know, whether it's genre, you know, whether it's rhythmic or whatever, they shouldn't think ever there's a music that doesn't have a place for you to be in it, and that you can't not only find yourself in it, that probably your roots are in it anyways, right? Sorry, you were going to say something, I missed you.
Oh, I was going to say something before around, you had spoken about, there are a couple of things about finding yourself not in hip hop. There was or feeling like I need to be hip hop or R&B. There was a beautiful quote someone said while we were at the screening of the film, and he said, rock was my first love, but when hip hop came along, it became like like a guilty pleasure, right? And like there was an audible in the audience. And I kind of wanted to touch on this because one of the beautiful things about being in the audience, watching the screening of the Onyx Experience gathered with people, was hearing people's reactions. And also it was like a healing session for people to be able to say, I love rock music, or I didn't think I could love rock music, or I didn't know that I belonged in here, or I've always wanted to, you know, because there's so many times when I've heard, and so many people have heard it within being a rocker or being a punk rocker or whatever, that you're listening to white music, or what, you know, what are you doing listening to that white, and so hiding yourself away, hiding these things that you love, like be it Metallica, you know, Sex Pistols, whatever. Like I was loving on Metallica and Sex Pistols and Nirvana and everything. Like when these songs came out, I was excited. Um, and and I wasn't afraid because that's just who I was. I was just classified a weirdo, you know. Um, but not everyone wants to be classified a weirdo. Even though weirdos, we rock, right? To piggyback on what Click said about finding music, it's like it is going down that rabbit hole, digging in the crates, right? But now what I do is I dig in the crates on Spotify or on Apple Music, and I go to playlists, and just go down that rabbit hole, and I find a lot of people, and there's you know, there's Instagram accounts like Punk Black, um, Afropunk. You could probably find some stuff. It's not as rock and punk as it used to be. Um, I would go to Punk Black. You can find a lot of stuff and branches there. Um, there's Black Women Rock. They're in Detroit. Um, there's there's another
There's a
one.
Black Brown, what's it called? Black Brown and from LA. There's a bunch of like different really
Yeah.
cool environments around the world. There's one in the UK. Like there's all these areas that are popping up that unfortunately are not in the mainstream eye, but they exist. And if you're in the scene, you can find your way into them. You know what I mean? But what's cool about what Save's talking about, like searching down the rabbit hole, like that's what I've been doing all my life. But like I found so many dope stuff over, even with like when I created this Honest Experience thing, I was like, okay, I want to make a playlist for people, so let me go find some things, and I would start digging, just purposely trying to look for things, and I just came across some of the coolest records and cool stories too, like learning about certain bands. I was like, oh, I never heard of this. I'd go to say like, yo, you heard of this band from Japan? I was like, you know what I mean? And then I'm like, how do I not know about this Black band from Japan, like a fronted Black artist in a Japan rock band from the 70s? Do you know what I'm saying? And how did that happen? I had to go down the rabbit hole to figure out that one. You know what I mean? But it's fun to do these things too, right?
What's the experience been like for either you, kind of now, not I'll just bring this to the forefront, the idea of everything we've been talking about, sort of like, oh, that's a different thing. Like, why are you there? Like, what do you mean rock and roll? Like, what do you mean Black rock or like Black punk? Like, what is it? Like, how has that been? What's sort of the reception, but also what has just been the journey along the way? And so has it been sort of like, oh yeah, come here and do that? Or has it been like, really, you want to, like, I don't think this is a show like that you're not on the same bill as these guys. Like,
It's kind of all of the above, it's for a long time I was going by another name. I was going by Saida Baba Taliba, and doing what I'm doing, which was very eclectic mix of music. I've definitely clarified where I feel comfortable in. But when I was going by Saida Baba Taliba, people were like, "Oh, you're a world artist. Oh, what? You do rock? What? Why?" And it's just frustrating. Um, but at the same time, it was just like, you're gonna see what I do, and you're either gonna love it or you're not. I don't care because this is what I do. Um, and I also got, because of being in Canada, because of my mother being a singer in her own right and being called a blues and jazz legend, which she took on, but really what she taught me was that she just sang music. She sang songs, and The songs they ranged from jazz to rock to blues to funk to, whatever she loved. So people often ask, they don't as much anymore, but they would often ask because they knew who she was. Do you sing like your mom? Do you sing jazz and blues? And again, it would frustrate me, but I got to the place where my answer now is I I express blues differently. Blues is the foundation of all music, especially rock and roll. So I do rock and roll. It's an expression of the blues.
Definitely is. And I love that. It's funny. So I just, not to plug myself, but I'm gonna plug myself for a second. Got a new record coming out next month. And my first single is actually Smells Like Teen Spirit, Nirvana. I get asked all the time, oh, how'd you ever think about doing that with a jazz band with us? And like I say, people say thing, I'm like, sing 12 notes, man. We only got 12 notes to work with. Like, it's not really that far apart.
I need to, you know what? I don't know if you ever heard the album Rock Swings, Paul Anka.
Yeah.
You've heard that?
Yeah.
So it's an entire rock album with a big band. It's brilliant. But I don't know, like, I'm sure that he got asked, why are you doing all these rock songs with a big band? But it's like, they're songs. And these are songs that touch me. And it's like, it's like, I remember listening to the Radiohead project where there were a whole bunch of different artists doing interpretations of Radiohead songs, and it's just the same. I don't understand. I never understand how people are like, oh, you like rock music, or you do this, or like, because music is music, essentially. At bottom line, music is music. So you're going to resonate with something or you're not. You don't only listen to hip hop. You don't only listen to R&B. You don't only listen, like, there are different types of sounds and musics that are going to fall through the cracks, which is what's brilliant about music. It is the universal language. You gravitate towards something more, but it doesn't mean that you cut yourself off from something else just because it's not R&B. And if that's the case, I implore you, I invite you to just open up and explore. If you don't like it, you don't like it.
No, that's very, very true. So what's next for you, Sept, in terms of projects, music? What are you creating?
What am I creating? So I put out an album in November called The Fool. Actually, November 4th, I'm coming up to my 1-year anniversary, which is crazy. It was a crazy journey. But The Fool is based on my affinity, my love, and my love for the tarot. And so the Fool is my own fool's journey. With that said, there was a short film that came out alongside the release of the film, and currently I am finishing up tarot cards to go along with the album. So that's my current project. I'm almost done. I'm only doing, if people know what the tarot is, there's the major arcana and the minor arcana. There's 78 cards in the deck. 22 are the major arcana, and that's where the Fool comes in. And that's what I'm focusing on currently, and we'll have that out at some point this year. Other than that, I'm percolating over new ideas for the next project, which I'm very excited about. nothing really that I can say. I don't want to let too much out because it's still in its very, very, very like seed, like hasn't even descended into my womb yet. You know what I mean?
Did I send you? I'm sending it to you again. But the link my buddy did tarot cards of all hip hop.
Yes, I love it.
I got one, but I gave it to Pastel because I know she's doing a bunch of stuff. So
Yeah, you
I'll
have to get me one now.
get you one. Yeah, that's the
Okay.
next. Make sure I get that sent.
Yeah.
Nice. So, Click, we know you're taking the show to Montreal. What else is well, not just with the Onyx Experience, but what else is going on?
I mean, always got my fingers in a lot of different pots, and that would be a whole other discussion. But I think like, just to go back to SATE stuff, I'm just really, focusing on trying to get her back on the road again because she's an amazing live artist that should not be slept on. And we're going to Mexico in November to perform at a festival out there, and looking to go back to Europe. SATE's had a lot of success in the past, touring in France and Germany and UK and stuff. So we're looking forward to going back there next year. And, those are kind of the things within that wheelhouse. Otherwise, I'm just trying to get the Onyx Experience shown in more theaters and more festivals. Fingers crossed, I submitted it to a bunch of different festivals like South by Southwest and things like that. So I'm hoping that the film will be able to be shown in theaters at festivals that people can experience it in that manner,
Oh, that's awesome. For me, like going through the talk, I was thinking of like 3 other talks we could have with you guys, which is which I was kind of worried about would happen because I'm just like, okay, cool. We should do a talk about how you manifest a vision and then you just bring it to life, which is the film, right? And then also too is like, how do you get on the road, right? That's a whole different ball game in itself. Is that Canada's small, we've got but we're small, where you can do, half the fraction of Ontario in Europe and hit 20 countries or something, right? And so like getting into some of those topics would be
it can be exhausting too to have to go so far across the country to hit so many people, or to try to hit a lot of people. Do you know what I'm saying? Because we have such a huge landmass, but not as many people in between the landmass. You know what I mean? Where the States is, for example, or even Europe, there's so many, they're all so close to one another, the cities and towns, that you can make, huge impacts, and Europe is like, their festivals are insane. Like they have so many festivals. I'm sure it might have changed a lot over the last couple of years because of COVID, but it's still an amazing place to go. And I think there's a lot of other places that we haven't even, like we're going to Mexico for the first time, but we did Brazil like 3 years ago. And that was like an amazing experience for us. And there was a great reaction. So it's like, you know what, and Latin America also has a track record for being like into rock music. So it's also makes sense for us to throw the ball into that arena,
Yeah, that's amazing. How did you choose some of the locations that you're visiting? I know you've already said that you've gone to Europe, you've had some success there, but what pushed? Was there specific festivals that fit the genre? Like, were there people there that were saying, hey,
I like to target festivals, like depending on, I guess, obviously the genre, but a lot of like the rock orientated festivals that have that type of lane, they're not usually one genre focused. A lot of these certain festivals are also like what they call a showcase festival, which is an opportunity to perform in front of like promoters, festival buyers. So it's your way of getting into the market to wow them so that you can get more opportunities to perform other places, It's also to network and meet other people, be it labels, be it publishers, publicists, like it's just a networking ground. So I always target festivals that have that type of entity to really meet and learn from people in those markets. Like I don't think I'm an expert in some of these foreign territories. So I want to find the experts, and we've been blessed to be able to do that over the years. And I think like, SATE's been performing all her life, has prepared herself for those moments. And, I think the first trip we really made overseas was over 10 years ago. We went to France to perform at Medem, which at the time, it's no longer, the doors have shut down on that festival, that conference, but it was the longest running, the biggest worldwide conference around the world, where every label in every country would attend to discover new music, and when we went to that, that's when we got our first kind of bite, because she performed and did a great job. And we had an agent there who, brought us back to do a tour in France. You know what I mean? So, and we've been able to do that pretty much. Sate's the type of person I know where if I put her anywhere, something will happen out of it. She's good at wowing people because she's a great performer, and the musicians that she plays with are fantastic. Except for this one piano guy that used to play with her. I don't know where he's at these days, but overall, throwing jabs at you, man. But yeah, I think like, it is important to get in front of the right players so that you can advance your career,
No, definitely.
We could definitely get into more about the touring stuff, but like just to piggyback off of what Click was saying about showcase festivals. One of the organizations here in Canada, I'm gonna toot the horn of SEMA, because without SEMA, the opportunities that I had to perform all over the world, be it France, Germany, Australia, Singapore, like those things wouldn't have happened without SEMA. And SEMA, what they do internationally is inject themselves. I mean, even South by Southwest was with SEMA. They create a space for a Canadian export conglomerate, like a few Canadian artists. They showcase and make sure that they're in front of festival buyers and publicists, publishers, whoever's at the industry at the showcase. So that's something that I would highly suggest as a musician, as a manager, as whatever, looking into that. If you're looking to expand internationally, it's been huge for me. That's what's gotten me all over the world.
And if you weren't a SEMA person, you could do those things yourself. You just would probably have to spend a lot more money out of your own pocket. You probably have to hire somebody on the ground there to help facilitate connecting you with the right people. You'd probably have to, like, I know people have definitely like, okay, hey, I do jazz. There's no export mission going to Jazz Head or to any of these like maybe jazz conferences, but I'm gonna go anyway, meet some people, rub some elbows, and look for opportunities. You know what I mean? So that does exist. You don't have to only do these things with SEMA, but it helps when there is an organization who's going as a conglomerate, who has muscle, to help kind of like put more of a spotlight on you. You know what I mean? And because we live in Canada, we have so much accessibility to funding. Arts funding is definitely something that helps us here. And if you kind of get selected by a SEMA to showcase somewhere, you're more likelihood to get the funding if you apply for a grant for you to go and perform at those places.
No, that's great. It's good to know. You know what? I think now's a good time actually to open up the floor to some questions. As usual, we have members from the CMST Youth Committee getting used to
the Youth Committee.
Youth Committee.
Where y'all at, man? Turn on your cameras. What you doing?
Yeah, if anybody has questions, please feel free to unmute yourself or put your question in the chat, or yeah, just jump in.
You gotta turn on the camera to ask a question. I don't answer questions unless your camera's on. Now nobody's gonna ask a question because they're all shy, right? Jeez.
Industry wise, in terms of labels and whatnot, how has that changed, SATE, from when you first started to now? Have you seen an evolution in terms of acceptance of Black rock musicians, signing, placements and festivals and that sort of thing? Has it grown, or is it still, are you feeling it's a struggle, or was it never a struggle? Can you just give us some perspective?
Are you talking about in Canada or
Let's
all
start
over?
let's start in Canada, then you can
Start in
expand from there.
Canada. It's been a struggle in Canada. I can't necessarily name, maybe Weaves is one of the bands that has had some consistent success in Canada. I can't remember if they've been signed. They're no longer. She's a solo artist
Well,
now.
she's signed now, but she's signed to an
Yeah, but
American label.
yeah, and she's a solo artist, Jasmine. The OBGMs are independent, but that's been a long time coming too. They definitely have some push behind them. That I think it really is about alliances, artistic alliances, that when it comes to getting on tour and just getting hype around Black bands that do rock, like there's, because the community is small, it's like we don't know who our community is, who we're marketing towards, and that's also one of the the points that always comes up, like, who are we marketing? Who's your audience? Who wants to hear Black people doing rock and roll? That's been an age old kind of thing. So I think it's grown. I think it's expanded marginally, in terms of having diversity on the radio, when it comes to Canadian rockers. That's marginally, like, if not, like, I don't know that I've heard the LBGMs on the radio yet. There's, so now when we open up the focus to the rest of the world, it's still challenging, because the question is, why rock, and where do we put you? Which is something that I've heard a lot. I don't know where to put you. I don't know where to put you. It's a lot more forgiving, or not even forgiving, accepting in Europe. Definitely. Like, they're easy. They're so easy. They come out to see music. So there's a culture of discovering music, discovering something, just taking in music, and when they like it, and then they're on it. But there's a different culture around discovering music in North America. That means you're waiting for someone to tell you who to like, what to listen to, what to.
I also think that there are definitely some systematic racism happening within the industry when it comes to Black artists and rock music. I think systematically, even if they're not purposely trying it, they don't realize they're doing it. But there's that thing in the back of their head, like, where do I put this? and you shouldn't even be asking that question, because if SATE was like, if a white artist was doing eclectic alternative music that was left of center, they wouldn't even ask the question, where would I put this? They just look, oh, this is dope. Okay, let me figure out what to do. Let me figure out how to market and promote this. Instead, they don't even want to figure it out. They just automatically say, I don't know what to do with this. You know, like I consider SATE similar to, like, let's say a St. Vincent, or somebody who does like kind of eclectic left of center, like music. It's not, you know, you can't really put her in a box because she creates her own artistic expression, you know? And I feel like there's tons of artists that do that, but never seem to have any obstacles or challenges when it comes to trying to find radio play or trying to find support or find a team members to be part of that journey. It's not the same type of thing. And I think a lot of it is because of the conditioning that people put in their heads, thinking, well, hold up, shouldn't she be doing soulful retro soul records? Like they want to put you in that area. It's like, no, but that's not what she does. Do you know what I'm saying? So it is super challenging in Canada, especially from the live perspective. With festivals and shows and having opportunities to get in certain places has not been easy. Labels pretty much are not even taking, like, there's not too many labels, period, that are signing rock stuff these days. It's a lot of pop, it's a lot of urban that everybody seems to be aligning with. So, but that doesn't mean the rock music doesn't live on. It will always live on. You know, it might go underground for a minute, but it will come back and shine in a different way. You know what I mean? That just happens in all genres of music, you know?
Well, I think there's something going on. I mean, it helps to have money behind you. This is what I'm saying about this particular artist. But Willow Smith, you know, she came out with a rock album, and she has money and pull and connections. So she had the Travis Barkers on there, you know, like the people on there to be able to do and be a success story. But I don't know what the numbers were necessarily, but she did tour, and she did, you know, use her star power to put on an up and coming rock artist, and that was her intention. I don't know if that's going to be her thing on the next album. That's the thing, you know, there's a lot of rock artists, and I really don't like the term black rock, because rock is rock. Uh we don't call it white rock, we don't call it white soul, we say soul, rock, but then when black people come along, it's black rock, and I don't know what black rock sounds like other than a black person singing rock, you know, because it's not a genre. If we're going to talk about genre, rock is the genre, black rock is not a genre. So I don't, like, other than Willow, I don't know of anyone else. And that again is like, we had Tina Turner, and who else after Tina Turner is selling out stadiums, rocking out, you know? I don't know. And it's not that there aren't any people, because I know a lot of people. I've been on the stages with them. I've seen them. I've, like, you know, I love their music. You know, there's a ton of people in Europe that are superstars in Europe, but it's like Skunk and Nancy, the Heavy, you know, like superstars in Europe. But then translating it over to Canada or North America, it becomes really, especially Canada. Canada is very strange. It's a very strange terrain to traverse when it comes to Black people doing left of center. Like I feel like it's really just starting to open up with R&B and hip hop. Like now it's really starting to take over, but still there's that hurdle to get over systemically, you know. So now we're here in Canada, rock country, and I can't name, we can't name as a household name, maybe other than Fifi Dobson, any other rock act that is Black, you know, and that's ridiculous. We're in rock country.
There are definitely some cool bands though that are doing some amazing things, be it the OBGMs. There's Cam Kane that I really dig what he's been doing lately from Toronto. There's More and More, who's, you know, kind of alternative speaking. He just released some new music. I think he just released an EP. He's from Canada as well.
There's fun.
There's a lot of, you know, cool stuff that's happening, and even outside, like the Nova Twins have really blown up overseas. They're from the UK, and there's just so many different styles too. Like, you know, that's the thing I really love. Like when I started listening and diving deeper into like the rabbit hole, I started discovering very different cool when it came to rock experiences and what it sounds like. It's not all one. Like the list I just put in the chat, you'll hear all different types of rock, like from heavy to like melodic soul to like, you know, all different types of rock, you know.
Zeal and Ardor is one of my favorites. They're a heavy metal band out of Switzerland, I think. It's really like almost gospel sounding music with electro, dark metal. It's just, I don't know, it's just cool. But there's a lot of stuff out there just digging in the crates, you know.
So would you say that Europe is more open to different acts in rock music and hip hop? I've seen it in hip hop as well, and R&B. And so also, would you say Europe is more open?
Yes.
I've always felt that. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a theory for that, if you want to know it.
Yes, please.
I realized that a couple of years ago, more than a couple of years, a few years back, I was traveling through Europe, specifically Scotland, listening to the radio. That's all I listened to. I had BBC on like every day, just traveling all through Europe for like 2-3 weeks, and or the UK, I should say. And I realized that their main radio station that they all grow up on, like, is not segregated. Where in America, North America, we are actually like, we've always had segregated radio stations, meaning you have a country station, you have a rock station, you have a pop station, like everything is segregated. They don't have that. They've never grown up with that. You listen to the BBC and you will hear a rock song, a country song, a dance song, a hip hop song, one after another. They've been grown and conditioned that music is music and comes in all shapes and sizes, and it can all be heard at the same time. And I think that is what instills an appreciation. And when I realized that, I talked to somebody, I was like, this, like, because BBC, like, you don't have, like, now you have satellite radio, but think about any kid that's growing up in the last, like, let's say 20 years, they didn't have that. They had to grow up listening to BBC if you lived in the UK. You didn't have Spotify. You didn't, like, you literally were listening to BBC. So you were kind of instilled with listening to music in a different way. And I think that really makes you have an appreciation for what you're listening to, because you're hearing, you know, Bjork, and then you're hearing Skunk Anansie, you know, and then you're hearing like Tricky, and then you're hearing Portishead, Do you know what I mean? It's like, whoa, you know?
Yeah, that's big for sure. Unless you listen to your parents' music, which yeah.
You know.
Anyways, you know what? With that, I think that's a good place to end the talk. We just want to thank SATE Click for being with us. Thanks for just like sharing so much with us. We'll be sure to check out what's coming up next. Jasper will throw I think he already has as well throughout the talk, throw your socials in the chat so that everybody can see them. And we hope to have you back in the future. Like I said, man, there's a lot of different things where we could go. We're always, I mean, there's no shortage of topics to talk about that will help. Man, I find that these sessions have actually been a learning experience for me, so I'm excited about that. And it's always great to see the both of you. And I apologize, I haven't seen you in person to give you guys hugs. That's my fault. Oh, actually, but we should say a shout out because I see the truck go by. So SATE's mom, Salome Bay, actually on a stamp, a post-it. And Jasper, I should have had this in the notes way back. So if you go to the post office, you can get them at the post office, right? So, and I'm gonna have to find a picture and pull it up because I went to the ceremony where it was unveiled, and it is beautiful.
I'm gonna show you.
Amazing.
I have one right here. It looks like that.
Yeah, everyone see that. I know Jasper's quick with it, so he'll probably put it. It's a big.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yep. So you can just ask for the Salome Bay stamp at
Do we go to Shoppers or an actual post office?
Shoppers. No, it's at Shoppers. It's at Shoppers. But you gotta ask for it because it's not it was released in April, so it's not on full display the same way as it used to be. And the whether you collect stamps or send mail, I think this is, when it comes to Black people on stamps, it's like, they've got some really great stamps. Actually, I like stamps. I like collecting stamps because I didn't get the Margaret Atwood one, but there's like the Christopher Plummer one, and yeah, it's just, these things are part of our history, right?
Make sure you guys send letters. I don't know if anybody.
I love letters. Send me a letter.
Send letters. I've been good at thank you notes. It's my thing now. My penmanship is really beautiful. At least I've been told. Probably lying to me. I digress.
Send me a letter. I'll tell you.
Okay, perfect. I will. Before we sign off, I'd like to give everyone a quick update. Episode 8 with Kezia Myers from Advanced Music is up, and they also just launched their podcast today called Amplify. So Jasper will also drop a link to that. Liz Lockery, who was with us on episode 11, she just released her debut album called Elizabeth. So check that out, and we'll hopefully have her back at some point too, at least with the youth committee, because I know she really wanted to, and we really wanted to. That'd be great. And another thank you to Simone and Tamla from the youth committee for your support of this event. Also, thanks to Stephanie and Jasper for bringing the series to life behind the scene. Please check back with us at our YouTube channel as well for previous CMST talks and recordings with the new rebranding. Yeah, that's it for my notes, man. It's Thompson. You know who it is. Coming back a little rusty, the cobwebs. I'll get it together, I swear. I swear. Jasper's going to leave us with a little goodbye video, right?
The blues got soul. This is a story ain't never been told. Yeah, the blues got pregnant and they named the baby rock and roll. Memphis Slim said it. The blues got soul.
upsetting. Know the blues got soul. Wayne on the blues had a baby, and they named the baby rock and roll.